Good evening, dear friend. My name is Shogo Miyakita, and I'm so glad to have you here. Together, we will journey back to ancient times in a story about an emperor, a mountain, and a wise and gentle dragon. Our fable will recount the tale of how the lunar calendar came to be from the 12 great animals of the Middle Kingdom. Won't you join me? For now, let all the worries and cares of the day drift away as you settle into bed. Let any tension in your body fade, and any thoughts in your mind quiet as you prepare for a restful night of sleep. And when you're ready, close your eyes. Long ago, in a land to the east, the Jade Emperor presided over the heavens above and the earth below. He oversaw serene deserts with golden sands, lush forests, and peaceful seas. A fair and just ruler, the Jade Emperor was loved by creatures large and small, from the tiniest mice napping in the rice fields to the great dragons that soared through the skies. Every man, woman, and child revered him for keeping their villages safe and their yearly harvests bountiful. The emperor's deep affection for his subjects spurred him to create a remarkable gift: a calendar. Unfolding across a cycle of 12 years and 12 months, this celestial guide traced the course of the sun and the moon as they traversed the sky. Now, his devoted subjects could make sense of the heavens. They could use it to measure time for the planting and the harvesting of crops. The emperor decided that each year of the cycle would be represented by one of the great animals of the Middle Kingdom. Like humans, each animal had their own unique qualities and strengths. But the emperor simply could not decide which of the animals should come first. Would it be best to begin the 12-year cycle with the dependable rooster, who announced the arrival of the morning sun each dawn? The steadfast ox, who saw each growing season through from seed to harvest? Maybe the gentle horse, or the ever-loyal dog? Or perhaps the mystical dragon, swift and wise, capable of harnessing the wind and rain? The emperor simply could not choose. But maybe he would not have to. And so, the Jade Emperor devised a plan. He would invite all the animals of the Middle Kingdom to race from the foot of the royal mountain to his palace atop the summit. A lengthy journey through abundant forests and across fledgling rivers. The Jade Emperor would decide the order of the calendar by which they arrived. This is where our story begins. Morning's first light spilled through the forest canopy in soft, golden rays. Today, every interested animal of the Middle Kingdom would journey to the Jade Emperor's summit palace. At the call of daybreak, the mighty dragon fluttered open her tawny eyes. She was a gentle giant, covered from snout to tail in scales that shimmered in every imaginable shade of blue found throughout both sea and sky. Her talons shone like iridescent mother of pearl, and her white mane and tail swirled around her sleek and elegant body like wispy cirrus clouds. With a low rumble, the dragon yawned, her breath streaming from her nostrils like steam from a warm cup of tea. Slowly, she rose from the bed of leaves she had fashioned for herself the night before. She stretched, sighing with satisfaction as she unfurled her long, winding body, the last remnants of her dream fading away with the light of dawn. Dew gleamed on the tips of the canopy leaves as insects murmured their drowsy chorus. The forest was still waking. Animals from across the kingdom would soon be arriving at the foot of the mountain. The dragon took a deep breath of cool morning air. A far-off breeze stirred the sweet scent of plum tree blossoms blooming in a field. Effortlessly, the dragon ascended into the sky. She found herself in the embrace of wispy clouds, gliding through the air with grace. Below her, the countryside came together like seams in a quilt. Roads and rivers weaved between fields, rice paddies, and towns. Smoke billowed from the tiled rooftops of village homes as the humans began their days. The dragon's astute eyes could see it all. The contented expressions of two young girls as they plaited each other's hair in the shade of a ginkgo tree. The pollen-laden thighs of a bumblebee as it flitted from flower to flower. The farmers making their way into the fields to harvest their crops. And in the approaching distance, past swathes of the countryside and untamed forest, the dragon spotted the mountain and the other animals as they gathered at its base. In the shade of the forest, the horse, ox, and ram spoke excitedly of the Jade Emperor's race. While closer to the mountain, the rooster preened his black and emerald tail feathers, while the serpent sunned herself on the rocks. The rat, always clever, appeared deep in thought as she surveyed the path ahead. In a beautiful ripple of blue, the dragon landed among her animal peers. The other regarded her with awe and intrigue. The tiger flickered his ears at the dragon to acknowledge her arrival. Out of all 12 of the animals present, only she, the dragon, was capable of long-distance flight. Alongside her companions, the dragon contemplated the trail ahead. A dirt path that led into a wood that crowded the foothills and the mountain that rose up from out of the trees and clouds. Tiny rows of rice terraces edged the switchbacks leading to the summit, and brush and bush wove their roots into the rock face. She could hear some animals chattering with one another, expressing their determination to arrive first at the top of the mountain. But the dragon felt calm and unhurried. After centuries and centuries of growing with the land, she knew moving at a patient, deliberate pace to be the best course of action. It was an honor to take part in the Jade Emperor's quest, whether she arrived at the Summit Palace first or last. Noon approached with gradual certainty. The wind gently rustled the trees at the edge of the forest, and the dappled light through the leaves danced across the tall grass. The shadows grew shorter and shorter, and the sun crept higher and higher in the soft blue sky before coming to rest at the zenith. One by one, the animals set off up the mountain path and towards the Jade Emperor's summit palace. The rabbit took bounding leaps, his lithe body arching through the air. The monkey leapt into the trees, gracefully soaring from branch to branch. Some of the other animals had already disappeared out of sight, but the dragon felt no hurry as she started down the path. She had never had the pleasure of visiting the Emperor's palace before, and something inside her told her that the journey ahead was just as precious as what awaited her at the top. With leisurely strides, she let her paws carry her forward. Little by little, the trees and brush grew thicker, each of her enormous steps taking her deeper into the lush green forest. Her footfalls, which had once left a resounding thump on the ground, became muffled as leaves and plants fell underneath. Her paws pressed against the refreshing coolness of the dirt, leaving perfect tracks in her wake. Stray twigs and dry grass crunched satisfyingly beneath her weight. Her world turned greener and greener the farther she walked, the path rising before her. Once again, her keen eyes treated her to a variety of mesmerizing sights. Enormous trees, likely as old as she, stood like silent guardians of the forest. Lush moss hung from their ancient bark, their understories teeming with life. Palm saplings and adolescent conifers built out the canopies, and flushes of mushroom congregated at the roots. A snail meandered upside down on the underside of a leaf in gravity-defying fashion. Butterflies loitered at the purple and yellow mouths of orchids on the vines, their flitting wings easily mistakable for glittering light. Perched in the arms of a mango tree, the dragon spotted the monkey. The monkey had already stopped, spellbound by the gem-like fruit adorning the branches. The dragon watched as the monkey grabbed a mango in his dexterous hands, unraveling the ruby skin in one continuous spiral. He took a bite of the golden fruit and closed his eyes, clearly overcome by the mango's perfect sweetness. His long tail swayed back and forth in contentment. Any previous urgency the dragon had observed in the monkey had been forgotten. The dragon moved onward. It became clear that this mountainous forest she had entered was a world of abundance. Everywhere she turned, riches surrounded her. Clusters of bananas hung heavy over the path. A line of ants ferried sweet morsels of persimmon and orange back to their hill. Honeybees tended to papaya and lychee blossoms, while mice and small birds delighted in the perfectly ripe fruit. The dragon even allowed herself a taste of tart starfruit, a longtime favorite of hers that filled her with nostalgia for her years as a hatchling. There was something magical about this place, and the dragon knew the other animals sensed it too. The presence of the Jade Emperor's palace had made this forest bountiful. The snake and dog had slowed their pace to take in the beauty offered by the journey. Past the stretch of trees ahead, she could hear the horses gallop slow to a trot as her ears picked up on the symphony orchestrating around her. The trickle of a small stream as it stumbled over rocks, the sweeps of her tail as it trailed through the leaves and grass behind her. Ensembles of songbirds exchanged various melodies as they tidied their nests and fed their young. The dragon's ears guided her eyes to a dove, cooing a lullaby to her chicks, and then to a deer, gently grazing as her fawn napped nearby. She noted the wind-like sound of her breathing, which, despite the path growing steeper and steeper as she ascended the mountain, maintained its even and steady pace. The dragon noticed how her chest rose and fell as her lungs filled with fresh air. With each passing breath, she became more aware of the rhythm of her heart, a dependable and constant comfort that came from within her, that guided her every step. What a beautiful journey this was turning out to be. Not long afterwards, the dragon found herself at the edge of a clearing. The forest thinned into a meadow of wildflowers, the canopy receding to reveal the softening light of the afternoon, and the valley where she and the other animals had begun their trek far down below. For a moment, she considered taking flight and becoming one with the changing hues of the sky, before the sound of someone snoring caught her attention. The pig had made himself a bed on the cool earth. His snoring sent rumbles through his chest and belly, his snout lightly flaring as he slept. What could he be dreaming of? Perhaps, in sleep, he had already ascended the mountain before the rest of them. Or, perhaps, he dreamed of a warm, sunny day, not unlike today's, spent resting in the shade of a wild apple tree. The land was cool beneath her paws as she continued through the clearing. Plants in every stage of life grew around her. Mature lily of the valleys crowded the footpath, while jasmine and peonies emerged from the earth as humble seedlings or tall, proud stalks of blooms that seemed to glow in the afternoon light. Her ears pricked at the sounds of the horse, dog, and rooster in a nearby village off the path. It made sense that some of the animals had taken a detour. Many of them came from species that spent their days serving and befriending humans. From a distance, she could see patches of cracked dirt and dried fields. Intrigued, she headed towards the town. As she approached, the land gradually changed around her. The ground became dry and dusty, less plant life growing on the path. Her long, pearlescent talons clattered softly on the paved walkway that led to the village. She noticed a small creek trickling alongside her as she walked, dwarfed by wide, muddied banks. That was odd. It had probably been a steady river only a week before. The dragon paused. The water levels in the rice fields ahead appeared lower than they ought to, which was strange, considering how close they were to the mountain source. The paddies should have been flooded, brimming with green shoots and golden grain. There should have been farmers up to their shins in water and silky mud, bringing in the day's harvest. It was all very puzzling indeed. And so, she decided to investigate. The dwindling stream took her to the outskirts of the village, encircled by a tall stone wall. Down the way, she spotted a man and a donkey pulling a cart. Passing through the entryway into the town, the donkey's hooves tapped rhythmically as they went. Rising gracefully on her hind legs, the dragon peered over the wall, resting her chin on the ledge to get a good look at the village's inner life. It appeared to be a typical leisurely afternoon. Neighbors conversed with one another from separate windows. An old man with a long white beard that fell to his stomach drank a cup of tea from the balcony of a tall building. A wind chime trilled in a shop entrance. Teenage girls discussed the happenings of the day as they walked home from the market, their arms filled with vegetables. She spotted the dog lying belly up before a group of young children. His eyes closed in bliss as they ran their hands over his stomach, scratching him behind his ears. It was almost unbelievable to think that this was the same dog that had begun the race with such urgency and determination. Upon the sweeping tiles of a roof, the rooster surveyed the town square in the company of a handful of hens. They clucked softly to one another, recounting the beauty of this morning's sunrise. Even the usually solitary horse had allowed herself the pleasure of pause, her head lowered and jaw relaxed, as an adolescent boy combed out her dark mane. The boy patted the horse affectionately on her shoulder in between passes of the comb through her long hair. It appeared most of the animals had chosen to slow their pace in favor of enjoying all that this journey had to offer. In the center of the square, a melodic folk song wafted through the air as a man plucked a gorgeous wooden pipa. His hands were mesmerizing, traveling up and down the pipa's neck and dancing over the four taut strings as he sat at the edge of an empty fountain. The dragon thought back to the stifled stream she had encountered earlier. At the town well, a handful of humans had gathered, crouching before the opening in the ground. Using a long rope, they dropped a bucket down into the opening. When they pulled it up, it was only halfway filled. Between the creek and now the well, misfortune had befallen the townspeople's water supply. The dragon felt a sense of resolve. Surely there was something she could do to help. She leapt into the sky, her scaled body rippling through the air like the dancing tail of a kite. The dragon ascended higher and higher, and the town below her grew smaller and smaller. Up, up, up she went, the clouds refreshing and cool against her face, until she was above it all. The vast blue before her was endless, stretching out as far as the eye could see in every direction. The sun painted the carpet of clouds below her in pale gold, and she knew that in a matter of hours, the horizon would be graced by a spectacular sunset. With great care, she twisted and spiraled her body in an ancient dance, curving and turning elegantly in movements that mimicked ebbing and flowing waves upon a shore, ripples across the surface of a pond. Around her dancing body, clouds gathered, light and gray and full of rain. they seemed to bloom like strange and beautiful flowers as water vapor accumulated in the air. Closing her eyes, she inhaled, filling her lungs with a deep breath. And as she exhaled, she channeled wind from the east and west. In the village below, the humans paused from their conversations and stopped working their fields. The rooster, the horse, the dog, every man, woman, and child looked to the heavens as a gentle crescendo of thunder rumbled through the sky. The sweet smell of coming rain filled their noses. A single droplet hit the stone pavement in the town square. Another followed shortly afterwards, and then another, and then another. Soon, a light shower washed over the entire village. The rain tapped out its prelude on the roofs of the houses, the awnings of the storefronts. Magically, the fountain and the well filled, brimming with water, and the stream outside the village walls began to course. The crops in the fields stretched out their leaves to soak up every refreshing drop. The soil returned to its rich and fertile state. Small guppies and frogs journeyed back to the replenished creek. In a matter of mere moments, the village and the surrounding land were born anew in the spell of the cleansing rain. Beneath the dragon, the flooded fields shone like a mosaic of mirrors, reflecting the fading light in the sky. She glimpsed her own reflection at times, a shifting and shimmering ribbon of blue scales. Still in the sky, the dragon looked upon the prospering town and its people with a sense of accomplishment. It brought her great comfort knowing that she had improved their lives, and she knew the effects of her good deeds would last for years and years to come. Eventually, the rain slowed to a halt, and the clouds receded back into a perfect sky. In the distance, the dragon could make out the top of the mountain, and nestled in the stone, the gilded roof of the Jade Emperor's summit palace. Through the winding path leading up the mountain, she spied the muscular form of the tiger as he skillfully navigated the terrain, along with the ram, the snake, and the rabbit. The ox and the rat moved ahead of all the others at the same measured pace that they had since the start of the day. She glanced once more at the village. Children skipped through the puddles. The townspeople now had more water than their buckets could carry. As a final parting gift, the dragon flicked her fan-like tail to scatter the sunlight through the air, leaving a brilliant rainbow that painted the sky from one end of the town to the other. Flying back up the mountain path, the dragon continued on her travels. Judging by what she had seen only moments ago, the dragon knew she was close to approaching the end of her journey. Around her, the terrain became steeper. The flat stretches of farmland gradually transformed into cascading rice terraces that rose like a staircase up into the clouds. The dragon took her time as she made her ascent up the mountain, basking in the beauty of the valley through a thin layer of fog. At one point, she passed the ram, who had paused at a lookout, in awe of the countryside below. The bountiful land, the rural village, the fields, and clearing of the lush forest they all had traveled through just hours ago. The dragon flew up and up, until eventually she came to a plateau before the top of the mountain and the bank of a wide and slow-moving river. The palace would be up ahead. Some of the other animals had arrived before her. The rat and rabbit looked thoughtful as they stared at the water, most likely contemplating various methods of crossing, while the snake appeared to be enjoying the last rays of the day. She dipped her front paws into the river and sighed contentedly. It was as if she had entered a perfectly heated bath. The dragon stepped further and further from the bank until all four of her paws, her tail, her entire body up to her chin was submerged. The temperature of the water felt heavenly on her muscles and joints. It soothed her scales and warmed her chest. Flying across the river would be convenient, to be sure. But she couldn't deny how much more relaxing this alternative was. If the Jade Emperor wasn't expecting her, she would probably stay like this for ages. She didn't mind lingering here at all. But the day was ending, and soon the full moon would rise to replace the sun. The summit palace was close, just on the other side of the river. The dragon watched as the other animals talked amongst themselves. The ox obliged the rat's request to climb upon his great horns. Together, the ox ferried them both from one bank to the other. The clever rat scampered off right as they reached land, with the ox close behind. The tiger swam across shortly afterwards, and the dragon marveled at how effortlessly the big cat moved through the water. On the other bank, he shook his striped fur dry and disappeared out of sight. The rabbit, not quite large enough to swim by himself, tried a different approach. The dragon watched as the rabbit made his attempt. Using his hind legs as a paddle and a branch to float, he ushered himself into the water. But the rabbit couldn't move as gracefully as the bigger animals did, such as the tiger and ox. Never one to sit idly by, especially when she could help, the dragon directed a light gust of air from her nostrils to guide the rabbit's makeshift boat safely to the other side. The rabbit turned to wave his thanks to the dragon for her assistance, before bounding off into the trees. The dragon sighed, savoring the moment in the river. It was hard to believe that she had been traveling since dawn. Even harder to believe that the day was drawing to a close. Unhurried, she made her way across the water, climbing up with ease onto the other bank. The last bit of sunlight glinted off her scales as she reached the final stretch. The sun was setting, and the sky shone in a hazy collection of orange, red, and gold. As night approached, the valley below was painted in stunning, dusky shadows. It was a moment ever so brief, and yet it was as if all time had stopped. The dragon had seen thousands and thousands of sunsets in her lifetime, but none as breathtaking as this one. Little by little, the Jade Emperor's summit palace came into view in all its architectural splendor. The gilded roof, the red columns, the ivory stone that comprised the walkways and stairs, the intricate designs that adorned the windows and walls. Somewhere, she could smell a pot of fresh ginseng tea brewing, as well as smoldering sticks of incense. She imagined the rat, the ox, the tiger, and the rabbit gathered just inside the palace walls, relaxing as they recounted the events of the day with one another. The closer she got to the palace gate, the more the path before her seemed to illuminate, like a twinkling of fireflies. And right as the sun finally disappeared below the horizon, the gentle dragon arrived at the entrance of the Jade Emperor's summit palace. There he stood on the marble steps of the great hall. The Jade Emperor. Robes of jewel-toned reds and greens and golds draped his figure. His long black beard hung down to his belly like silk. His eyes twinkled, and the dragon knew that the Jade Emperor was already aware of the good deeds she had performed, bringing rain to the village, ferrying the little rabbit across the river. He acknowledged her arrival with a smile as the other animals rose from their feet to greet her. Someone slid her a cup of the tea she'd smelled earlier as they sat in wait for the others. The serpent wound her way up to the palace gates not long afterwards. And after the snake came the horse. And after the horse came the ram, the monkey, and the rooster. The dog loped through the entrance moments afterwards. He yawned as he trotted up the palace steps, and the dragon realized that she, too, was growing sleepy. Finally, the silhouette of the pig appeared on the horizon, and he soon crossed the threshold into the great hall of the Jade Emperor's summit palace. Together for the first time since beginning their travels that morning, the animals arranged themselves in the order of their arrival before the Jade Emperor and bowed their heads. The Emperor stretched out his hands, calling upon the heavens to bear witness to the creatures before him. From this day forward, the Jade Emperor proclaimed, each year would be marked by one of the 12 great animals of the Middle Kingdom in a 12-year cycle, beginning with the rat and ending with the pig. In the Emperor's great hall, the dragon and the others first congratulated the rat on her victory, before congratulating one another on their significant accomplishment. A yawn passed through the group, one by one, as they all realized how tired they were after their travels. They had crossed such an incredible distance and experienced so much in the course of a single day. The 12 animals congregated on the royal red carpet of the palace and lay down to rest. The dragon cuddled up beside the tiger and the horse. The rat nestled herself in the crook of the ox's neck. The sweet rabbit found a spot between the dragon's horns and quickly began to snore. As the dragon got comfortable amongst her dear companions, treasured memories of her day passed through her mind. Her first steps into the green world of the forest, the cool rain as it fell upon the town, and the otherworldly sunset that graced the skies. Around her, she could feel the breathing of her fellow travelers slow, as one by one they drifted into dreams. She wondered if centuries from now, people would still recall the journey of the Jade Emperor's 12 animals. Perhaps they would remember the ingenuity of the rat, or the diligence of the ox. Perhaps they would think of the dog's unwavering loyalty, or the tiger's powerful grace. The light of the full moon glowed softly overhead, and the stars twinkled in silent communion. The gentle dragon closed her tawny eyes. She felt the steady rise and fall of her chest with each breath, and the comforting beating of her heart as she drifted off into a restful and well-earned slumber. And on this note, dear friend, our story ends. Good night and sweet dreams.